Welcome to the Rise Up Network. I'm your host, James Carmody. The Rise Up Network is committed to sharing those stories of servant leaders, those men and women that are out there in the community, in the marketplace, making a difference. I have a repeat offender who is a fantastic servant leader, someone who's become somewhat of a friend, and I hope to become more of a friend over time, as he's a very selfless person. He's been a leader in business and he's getting into philanthropy even more so. But at the heart of it, he's a person with a good heart and a good soul that wants to connect people so they can do more for the community together. And he and I both believe that businesses have a responsibility to bring that good and take care of our communities. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let me welcome my friend, Larry Kesslin. Larry, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, James. Pleasure to be here. Always a beautiful day in San Diego, no matter how much cloud cover or whether there's lots of sun or no sun, we're all good.
Absolutely. So, you and I both agree on this philosophy and this mindset, that for-profit businesses have a responsibility to take care of the community. And we're going to unpack that today. So ladies and gentlemen, Rise Up Network, you're in for a treat. I think it's going to be a very special conversation. Before we get into, the heart of the matter there, who is Larry, right? So let's back up a second. And Larry, just share with us a little bit about, your professional journey and a little bit about the organization Spire that you're running.
Let me answer a little differently. So my wife and I have been very privileged in our lives. We've traveled a lot. And in 2015, we got to take our kids out of school for a semester. I planned a semester abroad for the whole family, and we traveled. And for 6 months, there was one question I was never asked while in Australia and in the Middle East and in Europe. And that question is, what do you do? So when somebody asks me what I do now, I first and foremost say I'm a husband and I'm a dad. And I happen to be an entrepreneur. Because at the end of the day, I think we're so much more than the work that we do. So you asked me about my professional background, and I actually think that's just a piece of who I am. Sure. And it's not always the most important piece of who I am. And at this point in my life, at 58, I've come to the conclusion that we're here to live our best lives. And our best lives doesn't mean waking up in the morning, start working, and go to bed, finish working. That our best lives include everything, and we integrate our lives together. So professionally, I am an eclectic soul. I have had a corporate background with GE and Westinghouse right out of college, a degree in electrical engineering, and went straight into sales right out of college. And I've always been on the business development sales end. I would say today, my expertise lies in the areas of entrepreneurship and business development. I've had my own company for close to 30 years. I left GE in 1993. My last job, April 15th of 1993, was the last day I took a paycheck from a company. Everything since then has been on my own. For a good 20 years, I built peer groups for CEOs of businesses, and for 15 of those years focused on companies that resold technology for Cisco and IBM and HP and Microsoft and that whole industry. In 2012, my life took a big twist. Well, before that, so from birth till about 46, I lived in and around the New York area, except for maybe 2.5 years of my life. I was within earshots, within an hour of Manhattan, living in Riverdale in the Bronx when 9/11 happened. So my wife was 8 months pregnant with our son. Our daughter was 16 months old. So I lived through 9/11 in New York. And in 2008, we came out to San Diego because my sister-in-law lived here and my brother-in-law, and we drove the coast we used to come out here. I came out at least once a year, probably more than that, for family and business. I went to a lot of conferences in San Diego. I came out in 2008 and said, we drove to San Francisco and back, and I came back to New York, and I'm like, why don't I live there? Why am I living in New York? And I really took the summers off, and I went up to the mountains, and I would work from the mountains. And I'm like, if I can get out of the city for 3 months and work in the mountains, I could really live anywhere. So my wife and I started having the conversation, and we moved out to San Diego in 2010. So got here in 2010, clients all across the country. 2011, met a woman who was doing a project in Africa around bringing technology to rural villages in eastern and northern Uganda. Ended up going to Uganda in 2012 during the summer for about a month. And that trip totally turned my world upside down. So I got back after a month of time in Africa, met some of the happiest people I've ever met in my life that had next to nothing. And I went to a conference about 7 weeks later in Mexico called Opportunity Collaboration. It's 400 people from around the world trying to solve world poverty. And the theme of the conference is it's an unconference. There's no speakers. The speakers are the participants. It's the most cool experience I've been to in my life to that point. And every morning they put you in this thing called a colloquium. Colloquium is about 15 people with a facilitator. And the first 3 questions I was asked when I went to that conference was, what is poverty? Who gets to define it? And why are we trying to fix it? And my head just like exploded.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait a second. I just got back from this country that we call poor, and we're going over there trying to fix them. And I gained so much more from those people than I gave to them. I mean, we brought some computers over and we set up an internet cafe for them so they could get online and get access to the internet. That's a big deal to us. But what they gave me was a bigger gift. And people kept telling me when I got back, I was standing in JFK Airport, some late August of 2012 at 28. So I was 46 at the time, or 48 at the time. 20 years earlier, I had defined success for myself as the ability to do what I want whenever I wanted to do it. And if you think about it, to be able to spend a month in Africa and still have my business when I got back, running just as well as it did before I left, I kind of achieved that, the ability to do what I want whenever I want to do it. And I realized I wasn't happy. I wasn't as happy as those people I had met. And I started thinking about it. I'm at the airport and I started talking to one of my business associates. I had about 10 people on my team at the time doing consulting, coaching work. I said to one of the guys, I'm done with success. I need to be significant. I'm done with this journey towards success. Then now the rest of my life is all about significance. And it took me about 2 years. I was asked to do a TED Talk, 2014. Took a lot of time to digest. I went back to that conference in 2013, went back again in 2014, opportunity collaboration, fixture in my life for a few years. And I started to digest what I experienced. And I'd been to Nicaragua, I'd been to Southeast Asia on what you would call mission trips or whatever, trying to do good in other parts of the world. And I realized, first of all, I need to do good in my own backyard, that the rest of the world is the rest of the world. I need to focus on San Diego. So that trip that we took around the world in 2015, from 2012 to 2015, I realized I no longer loved my business. I didn't love my clients. I actually started talking to them about purpose and meaning. And nothing against IT resellers in the tech community, but most of them were not into giving back in the way that I wanted to give back. I mean, some of them told me how they gave back and it was okay. But I was about, I don't know, some of us, you included, have this DNA gene, and I don't expect it of everybody, but I'm trying to find the other people that have that same gene that says, my life is here to be of service, that this is why I'm here, and to get rid of all this egoic construct that says, I'm more important than anybody else, that my job on this planet is to give up my gifts freely, and the world will give back to me in ways that I never could have imagined. And that's how I've started to live my life. And it started really in 2012 when I went to Africa and came back and started digesting what it is I was doing. 2014, I literally walked away from my business after 20 years. That business in 2014 did close to $3 million in revenue. In 2015, we did about 50,000. I literally shut off everything. Took my kids. I was planning to do the trip around the world with my kids, running my business virtually. If I could run my business in California versus New York, why not run it from Sydney, Australia, or Dubai, or anywhere else in the world that we wanted to go? So that's what we did. But I really decided before we left, I told my wife, I'm done with this business. I'm going to take this trip to decompress. I'm going to take it to get my head straight. And when we come back to San Diego, we'll figure it out. We have enough money in the bank from the business to do what I want to do. We were renovating a house while we traveled, and I got back July 1st of 2015, and I started from scratch in San Diego. And all I've been doing since I got back is telling people I want to build a community of purpose-driven leaders in San Diego. And everybody looked at me and said, who are you? I mean, think about it. I'd never done business in San Diego. I moved to San Diego 4.5, 5 years earlier, but I never really worked here. I'd always just had a business here and nobody knew me. I never built a business here. I just moved here as a New Yorker. And it's been 6 years. And it's funny because I've taken on some roles in the city and people say, well, Larry, you haven't changed who you said you were. I said, why would I? And I guess a lot of people meet people that are different than who they said they were going to be. And I'm just not. I am who I said I was. I'm not changing. That my reason for being here is to leave this planet better than I found it, to help people find their passion and to be a connector of people to people, people to ideas, and ideas to people. So that's what I do.
Brother, you are remarkable.
Oh, no.
I need to hang
you're
out
remarkable.
with you more. You know, you and I have very similar philosophies in that regard. You've got it dialed in. It's now like in every fiber of your being. I think I'm not even close to as far down the path as you in exuding that.
There's no path.
Anyway, thank you for everything you shared. Like we could unpack that for the next 2 days, right?
Yeah.
What is your philosophy on life? How are you living your life? I mean, gosh, obviously, you know, we're going to have more than just this conversation. Thank you for that though. I mean, I'm just like so many takeaways that I could remind the audience to come back to. And I guess one, would just be look at what is your purpose?
Right.
Larry finishes in his introduction and his philosophies with his purpose. That are similarly wired to him, that want to give back and want to make a difference. And that's just such a beautiful gift. And that you also made a really good point. Not everyone has that, and they don't have to.
No question.
And that's okay.
It's okay.
100% agree with you on that.
And I'll spend some time with them, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time because there's too many other people that do have that gene that need it to be activated. When I say activated, we talked about this before.
Yeah.
I feel like when I first started down this journey, so I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a different level of tenacity than the average employee.
Yep.
That goes to work every day and does what somebody asks them to do. I make up stuff all the time and I create things. So when I go through a door, I close the door behind me and there's no way out. So when I first started on this journey of making a difference in the world, I thought I was sticking my toe in a little pond. And when I realized about 6 to 12 months in is that I was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean without a life raft.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what most people feel. So 10 years plus into this journey, I'm like, okay, most people, when you're faced with boiling the ocean, you get overwhelmed and say, I'm not going to do anything. So what I would hope that people would learn to do is to not try and boil the ocean. We see all these social ills. And if I left everybody with this one thought on today's conversation, if everybody just picked the thing that moved their heart and trusted that everybody else, if they did what moved their heart, that everything would be taken care of. That if you care about military veterans, or if you care about the homeless, or if you care about challenged athletes, or if you care about whatever it is that you care about, then focus on that. And don't get overwhelmed by all the stuff you don't care about. Or like, I'll give you an example. My kids went through the public education system in the United States. And I have some good friends. I'm friends with John Katzman, who started the Princeton Review. And I've had thousands of conversations, not thousands, hundreds of conversations with John about the education system. And I've done zero to change the education system. Nothing. There's other people out there that want to change the education system. That wasn't my thing. My kids got through the education system. My daughter's in college. My son is off doing what he's doing. It's okay. I didn't need to tackle that. It's broken. It needs to be overhauled tremendously. Not my project. I'm focused on challenged athletes is something I'm passionate about. I just started riding a tandem bike with blind people on the back. Most amazing experience in my life. Helping a blind person get on a bike on a regular basis so they can go get extra. And I'm doing it with this jiu-jitsu Paralympic champion who won cited jiu-jitsu competitions. He's just like a beast. So I get to ride with him on a regular basis, challenge athletes. And there's something about youth. And my daughter's studying human development and family studies. She's going to work with disadvantaged and troubled teens. And I think that's like the embodiment of something I really care about is coming out in our child. So those are the causes that I'm passionate about, youth and disadvantaged athletes and things of that nature. But I don't worry about human trafficking. To me is a huge issue. I'm not focusing a lot of energy on that. I know that the folks at UBS and Chris Marsh down there is doing a ton with some billionaire families. Everybody's got their thing. Mm-hmm. And all I ask people to do is figure out what is the thing that you want to focus on, and don't focus on too much. Because if you focus on too much, you don't do enough, which is why we started this whole conversation in the first place about this event we're having on September 29th, which is the Spire 100. When one of our members came to me and said, Larry, I want to start this fundraiser event. I'm like, I'm not sure we're ready for these, but actually we are. And the Spire 100 he came up with this idea, said, Larry, his name is John Clute. John moved here from Washington State, and he's new to San Diego. And he said, when I was up in Washington, did a lot of fundraisers. What if we just did $100 to get in? We go to a bar. It's $100 to get in. Everybody buys their own food. They buy their own drink, and 100% of the proceeds go to charity. I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's figure out what we're going to do with that. So I have a philanthropy committee, and we asked the philanthropy committee at Spire. By the way, Spire is a community for purpose-driven leaders in San Diego. We have a membership organization, and we do retreats, and we do regular monthly meetings where we bring our members together. So this was one of our events that we're going to do. And the Spire 100 has evolved into one of our sponsors at Spire's Feast on This, which is a caterer. And they used to cater our breakfasts, but we haven't had breakfast in a year and a half because of the pandemic, but they're still our sponsor. I'm like, would you be open to changing your commitment to sponsoring now these happy hours that we do? First of all, I think demonstrating a caterer's capabilities at a happy hour is so much more powerful than a breakfast. So it benefits them to demonstrate their hors d'oeuvre capability and their finger food capability than it is bacon and eggs for breakfast. But besides that, this is a cause-related opportunity for them, and they're very cause-related because the owner of Feast on This is deaf. Matthew Baker is a wonderful human being who's challenged in his own way, but with his inability to hear, God gave him supersonic taste buds. So he is able to taste food in a way that most people can't. So just a great opportunity to connect these communities together. So the Spire 100, it's $100 to come, 100% of the proceeds go to charity. And instead of going to a bar, I asked the caterer to sponsor it. So we hosted it at our facility, and the caterer takes care of all the food. And John Clute, who was the guy who came up with the idea, actually owns part of a beer distributorship. So he brings the alcohol. So it's open bar, fully catered, 100% of proceeds go to charity. And we decided that each event, we're going to focus on one organization. So with that organization, we have a member, his name is Phil Ferrari. Phil is doing a video for the one that you're involved with called STEP. The first event we did in June was for just in time for foster youth. We raised about $18,000 with the matching grant that we got. That was a wonderful evening. And then this event on September 29th, starting at 4:30 at our facility in UTC on Town Center Drive, we'll be supporting STEP, which is Support the Enlisted Project, which I know that you're very connected to, and you could probably explain it better than I can. But in its essence, STEP is all about helping current enlisted military and some veterans that are facing financial challenges, eviction from a home, loss of a car, to actually go in and fix and repair it. But the cool part about the organization, which I love, is it's run by a business guy. So Tony is amazing. He's a Booz Allen consultant who decided to dedicate the rest of his life to military because he comes from a military family, and he himself is a veteran. He knows how these challenges are facing people on a daily basis. So they work with these enlisted families, and most organizations like his would hire financial planners to help these people through their financial issue. But he understood as a strategy person that the issue is not financial. The financial issue is just a symptom of a bigger, deeper problem. So he's hired social workers to fix the problem and teach them the financial skills they need in order to handle the immediate issue, but get to the underlying issue that's causing the problem in the first place. So run by a strategist who understands business with a solution that actually works to solve the problem long-term versus putting a Band-Aid on a problem today. So that's what I love about STEP. That's what I love about Tony and what he's done with his organization. And we're going to feature them on September 29th. In January of next year, we've already decided we're featuring Challenged Athletes Foundation. We're going to sponsor their $1 Million Challenge, which is their ride from San Francisco to San Diego in October of next year. I'm actually going to do that ride with the blind dude on the back of the bike. I am beyond excited about that. Jeff Mata is his name. He owns a jiu-jitsu studio in Poway. And it's just all of these pieces are coming together in such a clear vision that I know I'm on the right path. And that's the part that you and I started talking about before this interview, is that if you let the world unfold for you, like we are a controlling culture, we want to make sure that everything happens the way that we envisioned it. But if you listen to Michael Singer and the Surrender Experiment or anything on Untethered Soul, if you listen to any of this, Eckhart Tolle, any of it, you realize that the world is unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. And if we just live into it and allow it to unfold, then our lives will be so much richer than if we try and control this thing we call life. And there's nothing to control. We just have to evolve into it. And the more I let every day just be, and the more I just be present with people and stop thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing or worrying about things that I already did. It's like, I don't know, about 15 years ago, I really realized that I need to confront things in the moment or within a short period of time when they happen. And I just need to stop ever telling anything but the truth. Because if I tell the truth, then I don't have to remember anything because I can recall the truth. But if I tell little white lies that turn into bigger non-truths, then I got to remember what I said. And then I'm no longer present. So to me, it's all about being where you are all the time and letting the world just be versus this control mechanism and this need that we have as a culture to actually control things that are out of our control. Control is an illusion anyway, truly is. And my life gets better when I realize, A, what I'm really good at. So we are taught, when I was at GE, I never understood this and I still don't understand it. They do this thing called cross-training. They take a finance guy and they put him in a marketing role for 2 years so he can learn marketing. But that's not what happens. He doesn't learn marketing. He learns how to be a finance person in a marketing role. He learns how to optimize budgets for marketing people, but he still never understands marketing. If you just taught him to meet really talented marketing people and trust that they're really good at what they did and say, I'm going to empower you with budget to do what you need to do, versus putting them in that role, they just get short-sighted on and the marketing department gets crushed for 2 years because they got a CFO running it. I still, to this day, don't understand why that happens. For me, focusing on your strengths, doing what you do best, and honing in on those things that you are phenomenal at and getting everything else off your plate, to me, that's life. That's what we're here to do, is to get rid of stuff, not to add more skills on. It's like, I don't know, do you want to be average at everything, or do you want to be amazingly successful at one area of your life? And for me, I just focus on what I do best. I meet people, I can synthesize their story, I can retell their story, and I can introduce them to others that have shared values that they would enjoy doing business with. That's why I call myself a chief connector. That's what I do. I connect people, not based on things that you would think are obvious. I call them, I heard this term from this guy, Jason Gaynord from Community Made up in Canada. And he says it's uncommon commonalities. What do two people have in common that they wouldn't know? So I have a friend who's a karate guy, and he's a martial arts expert. And whenever I meet anybody who's truly into martial arts, I introduce them to Neville, because I know he teaches at UCSD for the last 35 years. And it's really cool to get people connected around things that are not business related to people that are business people. I mean, golf's an easy one. Been playing a lot of pickleball, bike riders. I met the most amazing business people on a bike in the last year and a half. I mean, amazing people in the city. Some of the best executives in San Diego do two things. They bike and they surf. Those are fun things. I don't have to go to a networking event to go network. I get on a bike and ride up and down the coast, or join Challenged Athletes Foundation rides, or join Swami's rides, or join whatever club and go meet a dozen business people on a Saturday morning going for a bike ride. You do that 10 or 20 times and you actually get to know them as people. Oh, by the way, what do you do? Really? Oh, you work there? That's interesting. I might be able to help you. Really? Now you're a person. You're not a sales guy going in trying to close them on some deal that who knows how much you're getting commissioned on. So that's my take on it right now.
Larry, you are a wise sage.
No.
You are a treasure, my friend. I think if we could all be present. I mean, that's the magic of life.
My wife would wish I was more present. So it's I would tell you that it's easier to be present. It's
our mind wants to go
people you don't
direction.
know. Yeah, it's easier to be present with people you don't know, because you're really engaged. The more you know people, you know what their talk track is, you know what's coming next, and it's hard. I think it's much harder to be present with people that you're intimately knowledgeable about. So that's my.
I would agree with that. I think my wife would say the same thing with me. Wow, you were in that course and you shared that like deepest, darkest thing with a complete stranger.
Right.
And yet you and I are having, just below the surface level conversations at the dinner table with the boys.
Right.
I'd agree with you in that philosophy. Gosh, I mean, you shared so much. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. I want to, we've got a few minutes left.
Sure.
I want to plug the event on September 29th again, Spire 100 on September 29th at the Spire location, UTC. It starts at 4:30. We'll give you the URL. If you're driving, don't write this down, maybe pull over. But if you are not driving, you have a pen, write this down. It's inspire.rgalliance.com/Spire100. And I'll spell it for you. It's Inspire, INSPIRE.RGALLIANCE.com/Spire, SPIRE100, right? So go to the URL, check that out. I'm sorry?
The Spire 100 is all lowercase, because after the slash, it's very case sensitive on the internet.
Got it. So lowercase SPIRE100, and come check that event out. It's September 29th at 4:30.
You'll meet a lot of good people. You meet a lot of good other business leaders that care about, that's the big thing for me. I keep saying, I want to find the people in town that care about more than making money. Making money is a byproduct of doing the right things in the community. And at the end of the day, we need to be present, but we also need to be committed to the success of our community around us.
Let's talk about that for a minute. We've got a couple minutes left. And then I'm going to make a list of topics and I'm going to get on your calendar for subsequent conversations for the Rise Up Network. But let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
You and I both believe that businesses have a responsibility to take care of their community.
Correct.
Wholeheartedly. One, why do you think that is? And two, what are some ways, if someone's listening to this, they can say, how do I check that philosophy out for myself? What might that look like for me?
Okay, so we're 200 and some odd, 276, if you've almost 250 years into the creation of the United States. And the US government, in my opinion, was created to build infrastructure and protect our nation.
Yes.
Over the last 100 years or less, we've asked it to do so much more. If I were to look at the effectiveness of organizations in our society, I would say the most effective organizations in our society are the entrepreneurially driven organizations. I would say second would be medium-sized corporations. Third would be large international, multinational corporations. Then I would put nonprofits in the next. And this is general. I'm not saying all across, because there are some nonprofits that are more effective than entrepreneurial organizations. So don't take it as everyone. But if we look at efficiency on average, the least effective organization in our society, in my opinion, is our government. So asking the government to fix all of our social problems is not the role that it was intended for. There's this concept I've come up with that I call enough. I haven't built it out yet, but earlier this year, I've been dealing with this issue for about 5-6 years of how do I really structure the things I've been thinking about in a construct that would work for people. And I came up with this idea of legacy and legacy baton, passing the baton of legacy, but that's very personal. That's very egoic. The idea of enough is a better construct, is what is enough? And when you have enough, what is our responsibility? So to me, enough is enough to live a comfortable lifestyle. And when I see people making millions of dollars and people becoming billionaires, I don't understand the drive to protect that wealth and hand it from one generation to the next. The responsibility, in my opinion, of wealth is to steward it to support those in the community. And people would say, well, it's for my family. Well, isn't the human race your family? I mean, are we really that disconnected? We are one race on this planet who thinks they're better than any other animal on this planet in general, but we're not. We're part of an ecosystem. We need to support that ecosystem. There's a construct I've thought about a lot. When I went to Africa, I use the term relative deprivation. So in Africa, if you live in a village, and the nicest car you've ever seen is a Toyota pickup, then you're not really begging for a Ferrari because you don't even know that a Ferrari exists. But when you live in downtown San Diego and you're living in somewhere in a poor area and you see Ferraris and Maseratis and Teslas driving by, you want one of those because somebody else has them. So there's so much wealth discrepancy in our society, and it starts with business. Wealth is created in one of three ways. Either you create a real estate portfolio, that's one way. You start your own business, entrepreneurship, or you inherit it. Those are the three ways to create wealth. Our good friend, Ryan Ponsford, taught me that about 5-6 years ago, and I agree with him. Those are the three ways to create wealth. So if you have wealth, if you inherited it, I think it's just as much a responsibility to give back to society. If you have some residual income from real estate, I think it's your desire. And if you're building an entrepreneurial business, build it in. I know that you dedicate, I think it's 10% of your proceeds to STEP. Correct. That as a monthly ritual, as part of your business, you're giving a percentage of what you make back to an organization that you fully believe in. If every business in our society chose a cause and gave back, whether it's 1% for the planet or whether it's 10% of profits, or I don't care what it is, if they just gave their people time to go invest in the community, I think it's our responsibility because there's nobody else to do it. We can't wait for the government to figure it out. We can't wait for the nonprofit sector to solve it because the nonprofit sector has been challenged over the last 25 to 30 years. The nonprofit sector was set up in the 1960s. We can have a whole history lesson on this. But it was set up, in my opinion, as a way to fund businesses with philanthropy as the investment vehicle versus capital and equity. So a nonprofit was a business. It had a mission. It had a revenue stream. But the investment, the owners didn't own the entity, it was owned by a board, and the investment came in as philanthropy. 50 years later, philanthropy has become a revenue stream, and nonprofits live on philanthropy alone, and it's non-sustainable for many of them. So we need to get back to running businesses that happen to be nonprofits, but that's a whole nother conversation. The businesses themselves need to understand how nonprofits work, how much they need for overhead, the ability to actually raise money or help them build business models. If there are organizations that have no business model that need to be there, like the food bank and others, even the food bank. I mean, I know Jim Flores very well, and he did some amazing stuff at the food bank. One of them is building a food packaging business that he sold to other food banks. And he has the San Diego Food Bank as a revenue generating. I mean, it's not a big
One of the
percentage.
best run nonprofits, in my opinion. I know Jim's a dear friend to the Rise Up Network and myself personally, and is just a fantastic leader.
So if we just sat back and said, if not us, then who?
Great question.
So not the business community, who's actually going to do the work? Well, let's leave it up to the nonprofits. So how are you supporting the nonprofits? Well, let's leave it up to the government. Well, is that really the best solution? So why not? I'll give you a life's dream. I am 58 years old. If God gives me another 30 years before I'm done, this will happen. I want to find somebody who has more money than they need. We have enough as a society. We have enough capital. We have enough food. We have enough everything. We have enough. Yet we teach our best and brightest to go to work for 20 years to create their own wealth so that they can then give it back. What if we change the paradigm today? I have a young woman that I met back in 2013. Her name is Carrie Rich. And Carrie Rich, at the age of 26, I don't have to get into the whole story. Watch my TED Talk if you want to get her story. She was handed $2 million at 26 to go change the world. She was a director at a healthcare company called Inova in DC. And her boss and some other philanthropist gave her $1 million each. She started the Global Good Fund. She now has a Global Impact Fund. She's been helping nonprofit leaders and social innovators for the last 10 years. I'm an investor in her latest fund. She's now investing in those companies to help them grow. What if we did that for 1,000 people? What if we took 5,000 young people and guaranteed them an income of, you tell me what you need to make. You need to make 100,000 a year. You need to make 200,000 a year. You need to make 250. I'll pay you as a job to go work on social issues that you care about. And I'll introduce you to 50 other people that are spending 100% of their day trying to solve these issues versus go get a job, spend 40 hours a week doing that job, and in your spare time, volunteer for some organizations that you really care about. What if we just paid people? There's enough money in the society. What if we went and paid people instead of the nonprofit system? What if we actually created jobs funded by people of means? Let's say you're worth $1 billion. What if you could take half of that wealth, invest it for the next, you could probably fund 5,000 people to work every year on solving social issues. You could take resumes in, you could do run it as a business, run it as an enterprise that actually changes society as its business. Why wouldn't we do that? I don't understand it. We're so focused on creating more capital and making our capitalistic system more profitable, bigger. Why does it need to be bigger? Our biggest problems are homelessness. Our biggest problems are food insecurity. Our biggest problems are people getting trafficked for sex. Those are our problems. Veterans not having a life, military employees, you name it. San Diego, 35% of the city of San Diego are some way attached to the military here. How are we not doing this as a business? We do it as a spare time thing on top of the work that you have to do so you can live the lifestyle you want. I'd love to find someone with real wealth to say, that's a good idea. We should go do that. It's a good idea. Why don't we do it?
It's a fantastic idea. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. As a society, though, particularly in this country, we have been trained, me first. And you've got 300 plus million people in this country, me first, regardless of what they say or do. Underneath it all is, I got to worry about me.
You want to know the biggest place this affects?
Yeah.
The biggest place this affects is our kids. I grew up as a me first generation.
Sure.
Trying to raise my kids with my wife.
Yeah.
And children are raised by a community, not by a couple. So we go in our house, we close our garage, and we try and parent them. I had some major challenges with one of our children, and I learned through that process that he saw me as 10 different roles in his life. I was not really good at any of them. I was kind of mediocre at all of them. And when he ended up through that process, I got him like 4 or 5 male role models. And I started saying, okay, I'm not everything for you. I'm just your dad. You need to go find your coach. And I got him a coach. You need to go find your mentor around physical and emotional intimacy, because I can't do all those things. Yet in today's society, we have a husband and wife trying to raise our kids by ourselves versus in community. We should be raising them with generations older than us. When I was in Africa, the generations all talked. They lived together. They were supportive of each other. We've gone the other way. And we're going to go back. We have to go back. We have to go back. My daughter's planning to move back here with her boyfriend. Hopefully they're planning to have kids. My land is not big enough to put another house, but I could see buying a place that has multiple homes and living with our kids and our grandkids and helping them raise their kids with more wisdom than they have at 20 something or 30 something. You just can't have that much wisdom at that age. It just doesn't happen. Wisdom comes from being wise and alive and born and experiencing things. And it just takes time.
Agreed. Like we said earlier, we know less than 1/10 of what there is to know in the universe.
Correct.
And as someone with as a dad of 2 young boys, my older one just turned 4 last month. Well, what happens around the age of 3, 4? They discover self, mine, my food, my toy, my brother, and it's interesting to watch the development of the human mind, and not to create resistance and pressure to break him of that. But as a parent, I have an obligation to say, yes, there's you as an individual, but there's also an us. And back to what you said about we're one human being race.
Yes.
So how do we discover and learn how to function and take care of one another, the whole planet? Larry, I think you and I could talk for hours, for days. And I'm not kidding. I am literally going to make a list of topics that I want to discuss on the Rise Up Network with Larry Kesslin, who is just a treasure and a gem. And I'm so glad that you're in San Diego for selfish reasons.
Here. I'm really glad. Trust me, it's very selfish for me. My wife loves New York and she goes back for a couple months. People say, do you miss home? I'm like, what home? I was born and raised in New York, but San Diego is home.
There you go. There you go. Folks, I mean, this was just an absolute gift.
September 29th.
September 29th. Check out the URL again. It's inspire.rgalliance.com/spire100, inspire.rgalliance.com/spire100. After the / Spire is all lowercase sensitive, but that's September 29th at 4:30. And we're going to be supporting a military nonprofit that's near and dear to my heart, STEP, Support the Enlisted Project, which we discussed. Wonderful organization, very well run, doing very meaningful things at an extremely high success rate. If you want to learn more about Larry, connect with him on LinkedIn. Again, he's just a treasure, and he is a connector of like-minded people. So check Larry out on LinkedIn. Check out this episode. Remember, like, comment, share this with a friend. And if you know another servant leader in the community that is making a difference and making an impact on the community and the marketplace, let us know. We're looking for great people to get their story out, to shine a light on their message and their journey so we can make an impact out there. Larry, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you're just a gift. So thank you, folks. Get out there and rise up.